I was actually born in Nigeria and I moved to the UK when I was 8 for educational purposes. What was happening at the time was Nigeria was going through an oil boom. My father was doing very, very well as a doctor, and he could fairly comfortably afford to send the three of us over to be privately educated. And I look back and wonder how on earth that was possible, but he made that sacrifice for us. I went back to Nigeria after graduating. Initially, it was meant to be for the summer. So I ended up getting stuck there because finances were at this stage becoming really difficult for my father. And I had two younger siblings who still needed to go through school. And I had to take a hit from the team, as it were. So I decided to make the most of my time in Nigeria, and I studied towards the Nigerian bar and then came back to the UK with a view to qualifying over here. I did the transfer tests, which is the way that qualified lawyers from overseas can qualify in the UK. And the Law Society told me that I only needed 6 months pre-admission experience to be able to become a solicitor. Unfortunately, getting the 6 months was almost impossible. And it was the first time I experienced what we now call unconscious bias and cultural bias. My name is obviously African, and I ended up having to make 150 phone calls to top law firms and in-house legal teams to land my first job in law. I was actually working my way down the list of employers alphabetically, and I'd gotten as far as W and still had no joy. And luck was on my side because the lady who picked up the phone, who was company secretary, although she was English, her partner was Asian, and she understood immediately that this was an issue around race and ethnicity, and she gave me a chance. She gave me a chance to get my 6 months experience. I owe her a multitude of thank yous. I faced multiple obstacles being a black woman specifically. I had two hurdles to overcome. I mean, one example comes to mind when I was interviewing for a junior role within a top 10 law firm. When I reported into reception, the receptionist immediately said, "I thought that partner already has a secretary." And I said, "I'm sure he has got a secretary, but I'm actually here for the junior solicitor's role." And what I struggled with more than anything else is actually the gender side when I entered the profession. It was very male-dominated, especially for corporate law, and that got worse and worse as it became more and more senior. Typically, also, I'd be the only black woman involved in deals, and you become very, very isolated quite quickly in that kind of environment. Having my son at 28 was unusual, and I was the only young mum amongst the solicitors at my law firm. I found it particularly challenging because I am a single parent, so it raised all sorts of issues around returning to work, and working very long hours with a young baby was absolutely impossible. In the end, I had to leave that London firm and I moved to a regional firm. I actually left London altogether to live in Hertfordshire, because that way I was able to work full-time but reasonable hours and be the sort of mother actually that I want to be to my son. I was very, very fortunate when the opportunity did come up to head up the legal team for the world's largest biotech company. The other thing that was good about the role was it's very, very close to where I live. So it meant it was a short drive, drop my son off at school, and I could still get into the office by 9 in the morning. I spent almost 7 years working for them, and I gradually got promoted until I left as General Counsel and Head of Financial Compliance. So my practice broadened tremendously beyond pure commercial and corporate practice to things like data protection, employment law, regulatory law. We got used to things like the Medicines Act, for example, and litigation management as well. The role I had with the organisation was a very visible role, and I became the most senior black lawyer working within that practice area in the UK. So I thought, now's the time to drive the change. Having been so upset and angry so long about the things that happened to me, and frankly, what I was hearing was still happening to many, many others, I chose to use that platform to campaign for more diversity. And I get involved in many initiatives to that end because I feel so passionately about levelling the playing field. I got the shock of my life when a letter arrived from the Cabinet Office saying that I was being awarded an MBE for services to diversity in the legal profession and to young people. That was a pivotal moment for me. It really changed the way I looked at my career and what I'm doing. So, for example, on average, I give talks to about 2,000 school children every year. And I'm very, very honest and open with them about some of the challenges I've faced and how I think they can overcome those challenges in future. I provide them with work experience, shadowing experience, whatever they feel they might need to get on in life. I've met the Prime Minister twice around the female returners, women returners agenda. And I've also worked with the Secretary of State for Justice around the judiciary and making the judiciary a lot more diverse. In terms of my next steps, I'm currently studying at Cambridge University, and my goal now is to be changing career, to do something that more directly impacts societal change and drives change, particularly with young people in mind. So that's what I'm aiming to do in the future.